Most women are well prepared for what is going to happen during their labor, but they are often surprised about the things that can happen after a delivery, particularly during the first 24 hours.
Yes, so in this video we are going to share with you the 10 things they don't tell you about the first 24 hours after your delivery, at least based on what women regularly tell us. And of course, we are also going to give you a couple of tips on what's the best thing to do in each situation.
Right.
This is Nathalie, a pregnancy and birth consultant and TCM therapist.
And that's Mathias, a researcher and Science Geek, and we are here to help you and your baby naturally and science-based.
So here are the 10 things they don't tell you about the first 24 hours after your delivery. For obvious reasons, it is commonly believed that contractions stop after a delivery. I mean, after all, your baby's delivered, right? What they don't tell you though is that you will most probably continue feeling contractions, not only during those first 24 hours, but also during the days, sometimes weeks after your delivery. Well, that's because, first of all, after your delivery, your uterus shrinks back to its original size.
Yes. And second, whenever you breastfeed your baby, your body releases oxytocin. And oxytocin can make your uterus contract even after a delivery. Luckily though, these contractions are normally not as painful as during active labor. However, they tend to be a little bit more painful if you have given birth to babies in the past already.
Right.
But don't worry, eventually they are going to stop. Most women haven't heard about postpartum chills. It basically means that your teeth suddenly start to chatter and you start to shiver as if the temperature just dropped sub-zero.
Yes, scientists do not yet know why this happens, but it's a common postpartum phenomenon that the woman may experience at the end of labor or hours after her delivery. Obstetricians say that it's not a reason to worry, but they still recommend informing your midwife or doctor. That's because chills can be a warning sign if you also experience other symptoms at the same time, such as fever, right? So please do inform your midwife when you experience chills.
Many women believe that if they suffered from pelvic girdle pain during their pregnancy, it would stop once the baby is born.
Yeah.
But what they don't tell you is that this is unlikely to happen. In fact, in most cases, a woman is still going to experience pelvic girdle pain after a delivery before it finally gets better. The good news is though that it will get better eventually, normally within 4 months after a delivery.
It is true that breastfeeding should be established as soon as possible after a delivery, ideally within the first hour, because scientific studies show that this increases infant survival rates. To our surprise though, many women still don't know that the body does not produce milk in abundance straight after a delivery. It can take up to 5 days for the milk to flow. And so many women panic because they believe they don't have enough milk initially to satisfy their baby's hunger.
Yes, but that's not the case. It just takes time for your milk to flow. And in the meantime, your breasts produce what is called colostrum, which is a highly concentrated form of milk. It contains lots of calories, maternal antibodies and nutrients, and that's all your baby needs at the beginning. So no need to bottle feed your baby, no need to use a breast pump. Everything is exactly how it's supposed to be.
Most pregnancy guides make it sound like it's so simple. You simply put your baby to your breast and then the breastfeeding starts, right? And yes, sometimes it can work straight away because some babies instinctively know what to do. But most of the times it's not that simple.
Yes.
First of all, your baby has never done this before, and if this is your first pregnancy, then you most probably have never done this before either, right? And so it can be very difficult to establish those first latches.
Yes. On top of that, breastfeeding may also be painful during those 24 hours after birth and even thereafter. The most common breastfeeding issue initially are sore nipples, particularly if the latch is not optimal. Because of that, we encourage you to make use of the breastfeeding knowledge of people around you, whether that's your midwife, a doula, or a doctor. Let them show you what you have to do.
Yes, and always keep in mind it's a learning process for both of you. No matter how difficult and painful it may seem during those first couple of days or weeks, you will get there eventually. And the nipple pain should get better once the baby is latched on well and the sensitivity fades. The first attempts of breastfeeding can be even more difficult if your baby is very sleepy. Babies are normally very awake and alert when they're born, at least for the first 1 or 2 hours after birth. But what they don't tell you is that some medications against pain relief that you might receive during childbirth can cross the placenta and cause drowsiness in your baby.
Yes, in fact, sometimes the effect is so severe that they give your baby another drug to reverse the effect of the medication. So please keep that in mind, because some women are worried when they see the baby like that right after birth. We also recommend that you ask your doctor if the kind of medication for pain relief that you receive has an impact on your baby. You are tired and exhausted from your delivery, but instead of having that good night's sleep that you so much deserve, you are not going to sleep a lot during that first night. And it's not necessarily because your baby wakes you up. It's rather because initially you need to feed your baby every 2 to 3 hours, whether you and your baby like it or not. Your baby needs to eat regularly because there is no longer a placenta which provides for them. And second, frequent feeding stimulates your breasts, which will help establish that milk flow.
Yes, and the second reason why you won't sleep a lot during that first night is because your midwife is going to check in on you regularly, for example, to check your temperature. And they obviously do that to make sure that you're doing all right. So don't expect to sleep a lot during that first night, and actually also during the nights after the first night. Many women experience pelvic pain after they have given birth to their baby, and this can have several reasons. First of all, it can be caused when the baby's head presses on your pelvic bones in a certain way, which may cause a tiny gap between the front bones of your pelvis. Doctors often call this phenomenon separated pubic symphysis, and it's that gap which can cause pelvic pain.
Right. The other reason for pelvic pain can be tears or episiotomies, either because the healing process itself causes weakness in the pelvic floor, or because the tear affects the pelvic floor, which, however, is only the case in very severe cases of tearing.
Yes, and finally, pelvic pain can also be caused when the tailbone bruises. And this is something which can happen when the baby moves through the pelvis at a not so optimal angle.
Right.
By the way, if you want to know which challenges a baby faces when moving through your pelvis, watch our free mini birthing course. In that course, we also teach you how to breathe during labor.
Right.
Anyways, whatever it is that causes pelvic pain, we recommend talking with your doctor because it is important that you do something against it as soon as possible after your delivery, particularly if it is an ongoing pain that you experience.
During your pregnancy, your hormones almost certainly cause mood swings, including crying and irritability.
Yeah, some are even mean to their partners when they're pregnant, so that had to be said.
Not me.
You were. But what they don't tell you is that your hormones will not go back to normal right after your delivery.
Right. In fact, many women go through what is called baby blues, which basically means that they get super emotional. It might involve difficulty sleeping, crying without any reason, anxiety, mood swings, etc. And this often starts within 2 to 3 days after birth, but sometimes even within hours after birth.
Yes, the good news is that this phase normally does not last too long. Normally it only takes up to 2 weeks, but if it's not getting better after 2 weeks, we would go and see a doctor so that they can exclude that it's a postnatal depression. As long as you are pregnant, you can only imagine what your baby will look like. And so you obviously have that perfect picture in your mind of that angel's face. Big expressive eyes gazing at you, perfect skin, perfect looks.
Yes, what they don't tell you is that the reality is often very different. Babies are often covered in hair and a thick coating of white greasy vernix. Moreover, their head may look misshapen from the delivery, particularly if you had an instrumental delivery. And so parents are often shocked when they see their baby for the very first time.
Yes, we can tell you that this particularly often happens to daddies who may ask themselves, am I really the father of that baby, or is the father an orc?
Yes. If you want to know more about the things that scare parents when they see the baby for the very first time, watch the video that pops up now. You can also find it in the description below this video.
A final word, whenever you experience any postpartum symptoms that may worry you, don't hesitate to call your doctor. Don't take these symptoms lightly, no matter if they're physical or mental. It is always better to make that call than not to do it. Making that call can save lives.
Right. So if you like, watch our free mini birthing course, and if you have found this video helpful, we would be super grateful if you could leave us a like.
Yes, and for more useful tips and tools on pregnancy and baby related topics in the near future, subscribe to our channel and hit the bell.